This door is a high traffic door right next to a small loading bay. It's being opened and closed hundreds of times a day, and over time the hinges wear away. This looks like it totally wore away. It's utterly trash, and in this video I share with you what's involved in replacing the hinges. How do we know this is worn? Well, clue one is that it's squealy, but that's not enough. You can also see that there are gaps between the segments of the hinge barrel here, so that the hinge pin is showing through. On a new hinge, of course, in my hand here, that's not the case. The hinge barrel gaps are minimal. Now, as the hinge is being opened and closed all the time, the weight of the door on the moving part of the hinge wears away the hinge barrel here, and here, and here. That's what you're seeing. So the worn away metal amounts to such a degree that you can see the hinge pin in the middle through there, there, and through there. If we remove this shard here, whatever it's, you get the idea. This is thoroughly trash. The same applies to the hinge in the middle here, and the same on the bottom. So there's no point lubricating these hinges. They need replacement. So the replacement hinge is going to be the same size as the original, 4.5 inches tall. This is an inch based hinge, and 4 inches from edge to edge, including the hinge barrel and the hinge pin, everything. So 4.5 by 4 inch hinge. So the hinges are squealy everywhere, and the next challenge that you need to get yourself familiarized with is that some of these screws might be, the screw heads might be cratered out, damaged, destroyed. So you need to get a screw extractor. Maybe these ones look intact but misaligned, and removal needs good tools. This one here is just a plain screwdriver with a Phillips number 2 tip on it. This one is from a different manufacturer and has etched in serrations on this tip here, so these grip the screw heads better. And of course you need to exert a lot of forward pressure when trying to break the bond on these screws, unless you really like grinding. So that's also an option. Grinding a line into the screw head if this is cratered out to such a degree that doesn't come out, and in the path a grinder makes, you can place a slotted screwdriver. So that's also an option. Of course, on the last hinge, on the second to last screw, that screw is cratered out too much and does not remove, so I need to cut it with a grinder and special treat it with a slotted screwdriver. However, the other two hinges on the door can be put back or connected back to the door jamb. Let's see how this works. Last screw on the last hinge finally out. That was painful. What works for screw removal is an impact gun that just needs minimal effort. It needs 2 hands. A second hand would be on the end of the gun there. So that one is easy. That one is also easy. They have not been pre-loosened, but I might hit something tougher than here where the ratcheting action kicks in. But I don't want to hold it with just one hand. It needs 2 hands on it solidly. I ran into a bit of a situation needing this countersink bit on a drill press, because the hinge that I found in the size 4.5 by 4 inches, comes with tapped holes that have a thread cut into them like this that matches the thread pitch of the screw, but I want holes like this. I want a crater like this, so the screw goes into it and lies flat. This needs custom manufacturing here. There, that's how I want the screws to be in the door and in the door jamb with the head not showing, so when the hinge leaves close like so, they can close properly, or they can over close if need be, with heads being flush with the hinge. So this needs a little bit of custom manufacturing with a little bit of a cutting fluid or cutting stick here, and that needs, I don't know, a minute each hole, something like that, adding to the time. I'm doing this in 3 steps. I have to add the cutting paste, and then I clean up the metal shavings, and eventually when I'm done with the 3 steps, adding, cleaning, I have to check, of course, the fit, see if this crater fits the screw head in diameter. If it does, I can stop drilling and move on to the next one, or I'm doing 2 at a time. So that side looks like after round 1, and nope, doesn't get any faster or better yet. At least this intermittent use keeps the workpiece and the countersink bit cold enough without burning the metal on the opposite side. Let's see how this is looking after 3 passes. And it's acceptable there, and that one is okay. Well, it's not 100% uniform, but it's close enough. I can work with this. So custom manufacturing these hinges turned out to be okay. Once the screws are in place, it looks very acceptable. Now, custom manufacturing the hinges or modifying the hinges is absolutely avoidable, 100% unnecessary if you have the right hinges. However, the next step is absolutely unavoidable. You see how the top of the hinge leaf here fits in the recess here, and on the other side it doesn't. You see this difference in height is due to the wear between these hinge barrels. So this is the same distance that's showing then and has worn away from all the other hinges. So to put the door back on the door jamb, the door needs to be lifted up by this amount. I'm gonna do this with this tiny pry bar like so, and the door needs to be lifted up with 2 wedges as well. You use them in a pair like so. The amount the door needs to be lifted up is also evident on this side here, on the latch side. You see where the latch strikes the door frame here, it just barely latches on here. Because it sank down, it wore away the paint here only on the bottom part, and just barely makes a positive latch with this door half here. So that's where this hinge strikes the door frame, and then this little guy as well. So that's why this door needs to be lifted up. That's standard procedure. There's nothing special about it, and is completely unavoidable. Must lift up the door. You can only lift it up when it's off the door frame at the bottom as well as at the top, because otherwise if you're trying to lift it up, it's not going to go anywhere just yet. As I removed the top hinge, I noted that there are some shims right behind the hinge. I want to make sure that I don't move the shims. They were put in place to ensure the door is latching the way it does, so I don't want to mess with it. I want to leave them in place as is and put the new hinge on it intact. Putting the hinges on the door will require moving the door ever so slightly while the closer arm and everything there is connected, but it's not closing. It's being lifted up and wedged open by 2 wedges, and will need to be lifted even higher for, again, that connection to be made properly. The last screw is going in. All of these screws are hand tightened only, no power tools needed, just like this, because I don't want the power tools to strip out the screw heads. There. One last look at these old hinges and the pilot screws just 10 seconds before they are thrown away. So that's how much they wore down over the years. Alright, let's check how the door closes. It almost closes. Obviously the hinges are not to blame, and the workmanship is not to blame. I'm thinking about the top hinge, see how much that interferes with or that helps close this gap, but that's not where the door is rubbing. It could be rubbing here, although that doesn't seem to be the case. It could be rubbing there, whatever this look installation is, but you can see that it is latching where it should, higher up in the hole here, and where the door halves hit, it could be anywhere here where the paint is worn basically all along. So things need a little adjustment here. All right, so after a little bit of grinding here and there, the high spots, and a little bit of adjusting it down, all the way down with a hammer, just light tapping all the way down, I think this is pretty good. Latches with minimal force. Done. This is a piece of garbage needing replacement, and this latch was also ground a little bit because that's not how it should be, and this whole thing is filthy. I don't know, unfit for a kitchen, but hey, don't eat here. And finally, the last 2 notes to conclude this door hinge replacement misery. The manufacturer provides paper shims. Those are probably wonderful in a dry environment, but they don't work in a wet environment. Even if the door is protected from the rain, it's an exterior door, moisture will get to paper hinges. So no, better hinges look like this, either this shape or these ones. Of course, these need to be taped to the hinge because these will just fall into the door frame if you don't tape them somewhere. Last note, when the hinge is installed, the manufacturer Stanley should be legible right side around. If the hinge is upside down, then Stanley is going to be upside down too. The hinge looks reversible, but really it isn't.